Okay, we're going to get rolling now. All of our attendees have signed in. So welcome everybody. My name is Tim Christian. I'm with KW2. Thanks a ton for signing up for our webinar today. We're going to get started straight away. So we've got a great mix of marketing and communication professionals from 2 years, from 4 years, community colleges, technical colleges, public and private here today. And we're going to talk specifically about setting up analytics measurement plan for higher education. So as you are most likely aware, this is the first in a 3-part series to help you better apply website analytics to your marketing and enrollment efforts. Couple of logistical notes. We've got about 45 minutes of prepared material today. We want to have time for questions and answers at the end. Just so you know, you can submit questions on the fly as we go through that question tab off to the right in your GoToWebinar. Also, this presentation PDF will be automatically emailed to all attendees about 1 after the conclusion of our webinar today. So to just get started real quick, who the heck is KW2? Well, we are a full-service agency based in Madison, Wisconsin. We specialize in higher education, enrollment-driven digital campaigns across the country. So for 4 years, community colleges, 2 years, public and private. We are based here in Madison, Wisconsin, where we have the UW-Madison. We've also got the Wisconsin Technical College system here and the University of Wisconsin system. But like I said, we work for those entities and a number of other ones around the state and around the country. We do specialize in enrollment campaigns, enrollment-driven website design, and paid digital media with the goal of, you guessed it, trying to drive enrollments. That's what we're all here to talk about, I'm sure. Be it undergrad, graduate, professional development, or continuing education, we help a lot of our clients out with all of those needs. Your presenters today, myself, I'm Tim Christian. I'm the Vice President of Digital Services here at KW2. The other 2 presenters will be Allison Trapp and Claire Lemke. They are both Senior User Experience Designers and Digital Strategists here at KW2. So as I mentioned before, this is the first in a 3-part series. A good, I'd say 90% of you have signed up for all 3 of these. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. The first one today that we're going to talk about is going to be covering creating a strategic website measurement plan. And as you know, the website is no longer just a little brochure site thing. It's really the core of a lot of your communications and marketing efforts. So understanding the data that comes out of your website visits is really key. So that's what we're going to cover today, is setting up a strategic website measurement plan. The webinar in December will be covering simplifying goal and event creation using Tag Manager specifically, that's connected to Google Analytics. And then the 3rd one in January is going to cover how to calculate ROI from actions that are taken on your website. So hopefully you can join us for all 3, but really glad you're with us today. So to lead off, I've got a little pie chart here from a study conducted in 2016. 1,200 respondents across the country were marketing and communications professionals. 85% of them feel like they have more and more pressure to show ROI. You're probably not shocked at that stat. We all are these days. And marketing has undergone really a complete metamorphosis in how we're able to show ROI. The more shocking figure might be that almost half of them couldn't believe that they could actually show the impact of their marketing efforts on the organizational goals. And that's of concern, right? We all should be in a seat to be able to show, hey, if we invest $1 in marketing efforts, hopefully you can show that $2, $3, $4 comes back in terms of enrollments. And that's where this measurement planning really gets you off on the right foot in terms of being able to show and track ROI. So what we hope to accomplish today here is, number 1, give you some practical ways to squeeze insights out of your analytics. Number 2, begin to create a playbook for how you can approach that. And you can start hopefully right away out of this webinar. Number 3, show you a couple of in-the-trench examples that we work with on our clients here. And hopefully have a little bit of fun and have some discussion at the end of the webinar. So we're here to learn from each other, I think. So the big question maybe is what you're asking is, why create a measurement plan for your website? And let's think a little larger, for your organization. Number 1, you want to receive approval and buy-off kind of up the ladder of leadership at your organization. And when you create a measurement plan, you write it down and you get approval for what you believe your important actions on your website are. You get that approval from up the ladder from you folks. And then as you begin to report through analytics, they understand, yeah, we set these metrics out in our measurement plan. This is what we consider to be success. Do you agree or disagree with that? And getting that type of buy-off is really crucial for any marketing plan to work. You know, I was at a content marketing conference in Cleveland. Perhaps some of you were there, Content Marketing World. And I can't stress to you how many times I heard throughout that 3-day conference how important it is to write things down. When you set up goals, set objectives for what you're trying to accomplish, write it down, put it in an actual plan, get folks to approve it so everybody's buying off on the same game plan. So that's number one. Number two, the information that's in your analytics really should be helping inform your content marketing and communications efforts. So the more you understand what your website users are trying to tell you, the better setup you will be for keeping your content marketing initiatives fresh and actually providing information that the users are looking for. And finally, number three, when you publish a measurement plan, you create an environment for regular analytics reporting. So if you're not somehow doing a monthly or a quarterly reporting schedule for what your website's doing, setting up a measurement plan helps set that in motion, right? Because you establish what everybody's buying off on, and then a month later or 3 months later, you come back and begin to report on that, and you adjust as needed. Because the ultimate goal of all this is to help you create smarter, more focused communications for your end users. That's what it's all about. All right. So there are 4 main reasons we believe measurement is critical. So number one, it really can help you identify which inbound channels are performing the best. Number two, it can help you determine your ROI of ROI, both your online and offline marketing efforts. And that's key. I think too many times we focus just on the website when things we're learning on the website can help inform our offline marketing efforts as well. Number three, it should be helping you understand your users better. And because you're learning what leads them to convert, and we'll talk about conversions in a little bit, but you should be learning more and more about your users, which when it comes down to it, analytics is the closest you might come to doing primary research with your users, your potential students or potential graduate students. And then finally, it can help identify areas of opportunity on your website. Because remember, measurement, it's not about a pat on the back. It's not about showing numbers and saying, God, we're doing great, aren't we? No, measurement is actually about marking and then evaluating once you've marked, right? Because you want to be improving, and you may not. In some areas, you may not succeed, but measurement is critical to looking at it, seeing what didn't work perhaps, no matter how small, always move toward incremental improvement. Always. If you're looking at any sort of analytics report, always be tasking yourselves with some sort of action step. It might be testing just a button placement on a page, but always be thinking in an A/B mindset, because you should be constantly learning from the data coming from your website. All right, so I've got a statement up here on my screen right now, and perhaps you're reading it on your screen. Read through that sentence. And now I'll go ahead and read it. And we could all agree that this statement is pretty good. I think we're going to make it better, but it's pretty good. So why do we use analytics? To gain insights by looking at user behavior, and then compare that to what important actions you think should be happening in the ideal user experience. It's a pretty straight ahead sentence. But look what happens if you flip the first phrase and the third phrase. So now we've flipped that, and now I've got define your ideal user experience, and you could insert organizational goals there too, maybe. Define your organizational goals and your ideal user experience to help you understand what the important actions are so that analytics can help lead you to insights. If you're not getting that last line in your current analytics reporting, like if it's not teaching you anything, then it's not really worth paying attention to. If all you're doing is opening your dashboard, staring at a bunch of numbers without knowing what actions to take, not doing you any good. And that's when you want to flip that sentence to the way it reads currently. Because let's just remember, Google is just a tool. And Google is kind of the analytics is kind of a dumb tool. It counts clicks, it counts numbers, it counts page opens, it counts how long they were on site. It does take the human brain still to connect what analytics is telling you to what your organization is really trying to achieve with your website. So don't tell Mountain View I said this, but Google is kind of dumb. It's just counting clicks. And it's up to us to kind of add that insight in. So I've highlighted that first phrase of the sentence because that's kind of what we're going to focus on today. We're defining the ideal user experience, but I think we're getting above that and we're actually identifying what's the website's role in achieving our organizational goals. So I'm a 4-year college, or I'm a 2-year, I'm a community college. What role should the website be playing in actually achieving some of our larger organizational objectives? And a lot of those are going to come down to enrollment, right? But there are still a lot of other mini objectives maybe within that the website should be converting on. So setting up a measurement plan is key to getting started off on the right foot here on how this sentence is structured now. Just making sure we have our terms clearly identified, because we'll be talking about macro and micro conversions. And perhaps you all use this same terminology, but I thought I better cover this just in case. So when we're talking about analytics and we're trying to look at conversions, we have things called macro conversions and micro conversions. Might be kind of obvious what they mean, but I'll go through it real quick. So macro conversions are those kind of big conversions on your site that directly relate to your broader goals of your organizations. Clicking to enroll, clicking to apply, RSVPing, putting an interest form submission in, anything that gets that user or that potential student closer to you guys, to a recruiter or a representative from your college, is a macro conversion. Micro conversions are smaller indicators of kind of nudging a visitor toward one of those macro conversions. So examples of micro conversions could be when they sign up just to receive email from you, or if there's a newsletter that you release every year or every 6 months. Page level engagement, how long they're spending on site or on site and on page. Those are little micro moments. And by the way, micro moments is a thing that we've heard a lot from Google, saying we all live in micro moments. And that's everybody across the board, right? Like on a given day, I want to say the latest research from last year shows we all interact with our phones between 50 and 80 times every day looking at our phones. So we can't expect that a user is going to come to your college's website and spend that golden 10 minutes and actually learn everything they should about what they need to know in order to begin the enrollment process. Chances are you got them for 1 to 2 minutes at a time, maybe 3 if you're lucky. And your analytics probably bears this out. I'd love to hear from folks through questions and answers if you have different statistics. But on average, we see 2 to 3 minutes tops, and those are 3 minutes would be considered a high engagement time. So we live in these micro moments. We got to know what to learn from those little micro moments when they're on our site. So that's kind of the setup, because we're going to dig in now and actually begin to talk about the framework for setting up a measurement plan. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Claire Lemke. Hello.
Hello. All right. So Tim just covered all the reasons why insights-driven measurement is so important. So now we'll talk through a framework to help you develop a practical and useful measurement plan for your higher education organization. So I know that some of you today are from technical and community colleges, some are from 2-year or 4 years. So the examples that we have included are really meant to help each of you as you create your own measurement plan. We've tried to include 2 very different examples, so hopefully you can see some of your own goals in there. I'm sure that some of you have intended audiences that we won't be able to cover today, or goals that we haven't covered here, but we tried our best to give a variety of examples. So measurement for higher education, as you know, is fundamentally different from something like a company like Amazon. So e-commerce websites have an easier time measuring their paths to conversion. Products are less expensive than degrees, and therefore they're going to require a lot less research. The entire purchase process for a place like Amazon can take place in one website visit if the user really wants to go in and complete a purchase. So there's no, applying to purchase a product and then waiting for Amazon to approve or deny me. I'm able to just go in as a user and make that decision. And then a conversion doesn't usually require conversation with another party, like a parent or a spouse. In higher education, the thing that you're selling is not necessarily tangible. So sometimes it is, right? It's going to be a one-time class that somebody can take or tickets to a campus performance. But usually your goal is to communicate the value of something that's a lot less tangible, like the trajectory of lifelong learning or the caliber of your instructors, graduation statistics, or a great faculty to student ratio. So for example, we are located in Madison, Wisconsin. And for those of you who know Madison, you probably know us as the Badgers. So there's a brand equity that comes along with this mascot, right? It's a Camp Randall experience. It's a family tradition. It's a UW-Madison degree. But with that said, even though it may be the case that a lot of what you're trying to sell is intangible, there are still actions that users can take on your website that have a measurable impact and value to your organization. Some examples of those things might be that watching a video about a new research facility might encourage a potential graduate student to learn more and apply. Reading about a new program offering might encourage a potential undergraduate student or their parents to consider applying. Seeing a press release about a category thought leader becoming the dean of a program might just tip the scale for a potential donor in your community. So every piece of content on your site has value to your organization. And every click of the mouse or tap on a screen is a way that you can start measuring the value of that content. A measurement plan is really the translation of your organization's business-oriented objectives into some concrete metrics and website goals that you can measure from the actions that people take on your website. It does require foresight and setting up the right type of tracking so that you can actually measure those actions. And it requires having the right content so that users can actually do what you need them to do on your site. So when we help higher education clients add value to their website analytics, we typically ask them, what does your website need to do for your organization? And that's a really big question. So here's what we mean by that. Today, we'll be covering a 4-step framework for answering that question in a really tangible way. And what this does is take that really huge question, why does your website exist, and breaks it into some more manageable chunks that you can tackle one by one. So today we're going to tackle determining your organizational objectives, translating those into website goals, finding your KPIs or key performance indicators and setting some realistic targets or goals, and then identifying the valuable audience segments that are going to be a part of each of those KPIs and goals. So I'm going to cover the first step with some examples, and then I'll hand things over to Allison. Step 1, what are your organization's objectives? Depending on the type of organization that you're a part of, or maybe you're part of a segment of a larger organization, you might have multiple. And depending on how many audiences you have, you might have quite a few objectives. So the key question to ask yourself and your stakeholders is, why do we exist? To answer this question fully, you can define all the people who need to be in the room and at the table as that question is kind of formed and answered. That is probably going to include some key leadership, staff members, other stakeholders within the organization. It's really important to include the marketing team that's going to be on the hook for designing any initiatives that come out of this, and your web team for making it all happen. Next, once you gather that group and make sure that all the right stakeholders are identified, what you're going to do is determine what you're trying to achieve at that macro level. So put another way, what must we do or what must we get in order to continue to exist? And that for your organization, depending on what you're doing, might be enrolling undergraduates or enrolling graduate students. It might be to recruit top-notch faculty or to re-engage with people on a professional development scale. It might be to get donations or to increase community awareness or community involvement. So in this really critical stakeholder meeting, you're going to create that list of objectives. You'll document them. So like Tim said, writing these things down is absolutely critical to being able to pursue them. So then you'll solidify a plan to actually reach those goals. And that means committing to the plan with real deadlines, real staffing, and basically figuring out as a team how you're going to make that happen. So here are some examples from a couple of our partners who went through this exercise. We have one that's on more of the brand equity side and one that's a more tangible one. So again, two very different examples, but hopefully this lets you see how your organization might fit into one of these two areas. So first up is the UW College of Engineering. And they came up with the brand objective that is a lot less tangible. It is to increase awareness of the College of Engineering's world-changing research. So this slide gives you a preview of the measurement plan that we're going to be creating over the next 20 minutes or so. So you'll see up at the top, there's that navy blue box that says the organizational objective. Again, increasing awareness of the College of Engineering's world-changing research. Below, you see website goals, and Allison's going to talk about those, how to establish them, and really how to define them in finite ways. Then we'll get into those KPIs and targets, and finally, audience segments. So in their exercise, Blackhawk Technical College determined the objective that means the most to them is really increasing applications for their associate degree programs. And again, that one's a lot more of a tangible example. So of course, you know, the College of Engineering has other organizational objectives too. They want to get undergraduate students interested and in the door. They want to get graduate students. They have a professional development program. But for the purposes of this exercise, it's really important to look at something that's a little bit outside of the box. So here we can see Blackhawk Technical College's kind of starting point for a measurement plan. Okay, so the next step is translating those objectives into website goals. So that starting point of those three red boxes. And for that, I'm going to hand things over to Allison.
Thanks, Claire. So as Claire mentioned, we're going to take those business goals from step one and begin to translate them into strategic website goals. So the great news for this step is that you've pretty much already done all the heavy lifting. Now you'll need to review your website thoroughly and find all the different ways it helps you meet those objectives you decided on in step one. It's a good idea to keep your leadership team involved in this process. Make sure the entire team is aligned. That's something that Tim went through as well. It's really important to have everyone aligned on what these objectives are. But really, most of the heavy lifting here is probably going to be done by your marketing and communications team or possibly your web team. To complete this step, you'll review your website to find all the ways it helps you meet your goals. There should be a direct, clear line between your organizational objectives and your website goals. If one of your goals is to increase course enrollment, then increasing online enrollment will be your corresponding website goal. Remember, as Tim mentioned, there are both macro and micro conversions. You don't want to just focus on your main conversions, so whether that be enrolling students or getting donations or engaging with alumni, you also want to think about all the other ways users could express significant interest along the way to a major conversion. And we'll go through some examples of that. If you have a goal that can't be met by your current website, now is a really great time to discuss if you need to make any website improvements to bring your site closer to that ideal user experience. So coming out of this step in the process, you should have some site goals that help you achieve those larger organizational objectives. And we'll go through a couple examples of that. So as you'll recall, the College of Engineering really wanted to be seen as a research thought leader and increase awareness of that world-changing research. Their website is a major communication vehicle that helps them reach that goal. We'll break that larger organizational objective into three different website goals. This first goal is communicating UW Engineers' unique approach to solving research challenges. So that's really a brand goal, communicating that brand on the website. Our second goal is to increase awareness of the current research work that is being done by the faculty, students, and centers at the College of Engineering. So really making the public, peer institutions, the media aware of all that good work that's being done currently by the college. Lastly, they want to use the website to create opportunities for both cross-college and professional collaboration. So working with other centers on campus, as well as working with businesses to get research work done. So those are our 3 goals for the College of Engineering. So you can see there, we've started to fill out our measurement plan a little bit more. And we've got our 3 goals that ladder up to that larger goal of increasing awareness of their world-changing research. It's a little bit more straightforward for our Blackhawk example. It's a little bit more of a tangible goal. They want to increase their online associate degree program applications, and the primary way to do that is to increase online applications on the site. So that's obviously going to be a major website goal. However, there are other ways that prospective students could actually show interest in the program before applying, such as increasing engagement with that program content. And we don't want to forget about other smaller conversions along the way. Blackhawk knows that if they get a prospect to take a tour, they're far more likely to actually apply. So we also want to make sure that we're tracking tour requests from the site. Now Claire is going to take us into step 3, and we'll identify key performance indicators for these 3 website goals.
Okay, so now that we've identified the objectives in step 1 and then translated those into website goals in step 2, you'll need to further translate those into key performance indicators. So this is step 3 of creating your measurement plan. What that means is that you'll be translating what you need to get, so let's say enrollments or donations, into all the micro moments that you can track that stack up into that macro conversion. So how do you identify your key performance indicators? You'll need to answer the core question, what metrics help us understand how we're doing? So that doesn't just mean measuring that final objective, for example, an enrolled student who's sitting in a classroom, but it also means identifying and then tracking all of those actions that lead up to that moment. So say your objective is enrollment. KPIs leading up to that could be site visits from a related ad or a marketing campaign, and then visits to a related program page, visits to a specific course page. Then they click to request more information. Then they reach a thank you page after requesting more information. Then they click on a faculty or admissions email address. They might click on an apply button. So you could stop there, or you can measure all the way through submitted application, approved application, student sitting in class, student graduating. You get the picture. It might sound really complicated, but what I just ran through was a list of KPIs, both micro and macro, on your site and off your site, from the farthest away from your objective, moving all the way down through the funnel to the point of purchase, and then all the way to your final ultimate organizational objective. So to get to that list of KPIs, you are going to gather your marketing and communications team, review the objectives that that larger group created, and then determine which metrics are going to help you measure your progress. The outcome of this exercise is going to be a list of KPIs with targets for each of them, and those should be really measurable, hard number targets. You can determine a good number for each of these micro and macro conversions in a couple different ways. First, the ideal way is to look at past data and set any goals for growth based on what you know as your past performance. So I know for those of you who are currently tracking a lot of your micro and macro moments, you're going to be able to look one-to-one at these things over time as you change your marketing. But for most of us, if you're not currently tracking one of these things, you won't have a benchmark in place. So it would be difficult for you to see kind of a one-to-one comparison over time. So if you don't have past data, we recommend starting with any campus peers that you may have, because you never know, they might have a wealth of information about what they're seeing on their website currently. And you can base some of your targets based on theirs. You could look online for some industry benchmarks. So there's a lot of good information out there about higher education marketing specifically, or you can just look at general metrics for on-site conversions and things like that. And then as a last resort, you can make an educated guess, or you can just say, we'd like to see more than right now. Pretty much any place that you start is a good place to start. So work with what you've got. And the important thing is about setting these things up so that in the future you can track them. So now I'll walk through some examples of what those KPIs might be. So the objective for College of Engineering will start to sound like a broken record, but that navy blue box is to increase awareness of the College of Engineering's world-changing research. So one thing that can lead to an understanding of how close people are to that objective would be page views, so the total number, and the average page depth of that research content. So how engaged are people in really reviewing this information and getting immersed in it? Another set of KPIs is going to be on this slide. So this would be clicks on that expert search navigation. So are they really digging into the faculty that produces this information? They might sign up for an email newsletter. And that's a great conversion, because then you can see, okay, not only does this person want to be involved right now in their time, but they're also willing to be kind of involved on our time. So now you've got a little bit of information about them. If they share a story on social media, that could be a micro conversion. And then even through Google Analytics event tracking, you can check how far down the page people are scrolling. And you might say, a person that scrolls only 50% down the page and reads about a third of our article, when you take the header space into account, is a lot less engaged than a person who scrolls all the way down to the footer. So you might set a goal as people reading 75% or 80 or 100% of your articles. And all of those could be micro conversions. Sometimes you'll want to track how effective you are in getting your audience to all the resources that they need. So for the UW College of Engineering, they want to create those partnerships with campus and external organizations. And so they're going to be tracking all the exit clicks to other websites around campus and around in the industry, to see how effective their website was in kind of creating those partnerships and helping people get more information. So this slide, now that we've got those first two sections filled in with steps 1 and 2, now we can see how step 3 gets into those really detailed KPIs. So all those gold boxes, the page views, email sign up, story scroll depth, are going to be the key performance indicators. And that what you'll do as part of your organization is you'll attach those benchmarks or those specific numbers to each of those to really help track your progress over time. So now let's look at how to establish KPIs for Blackhawk Technical College. So if you recall, their objective that their team determined was to increase applications for their associate degree programs. So some of the high funnel or micro conversions that they're going to be tracking are page views for those relevant programs. Mid-funnel or mid-level conversions are going to be scroll depth on those pages. So maybe an admissions information, admission requirements, maybe the page depth or length of time on the page for how to pay for college or how to apply. But then that low funnel or macro conversion is going to be the apply button click. So other KPIs might be the number of clicks that BTC gets inquiring about different programs. Or some others might be clicking a play button on an informational video. It could be checking out their really unique feature, which is their career pathways, or looking at upcoming dates for specific classes, or clicking on a call to action about taking a single class. It could be clicking on the email address on the Take a Tour page, which is an action that indicates that somebody probably just needs that final push, that in-person impression in order to make their final decision. Okay, so here, now that we've gone through all those examples of what they would include for KPIs in step 3, you can see that this measurement plan is really starting to take shape. So we've got the navy blue box with that organizational objective, we've got our 3 website goals, and then the KPIs that ladder up to that. So finally, Allison is going to lead us through step 4, which is identifying all of your audience segments.
All right, so once you've completed those first 3 steps, you have a pretty good measurement plan. We just looked at it, pretty filled out. But don't forget this 4th step. It's really critical to add one more layer to keep track of your audiences, particularly in higher ed when your website is communicating to so many different types of users. You want to make sure that each goal is aligned with the correct users, and those users are really taking the actions that you want them to take on your site. So our 4th step is really about identifying audience segments and matching them up to those goals. Your measurement plan really can't work hard for you if you're not also measuring who you're talking to. This final step is really about defining those audiences so you can segment important audiences or filter out less valuable audiences based on their characteristics or their website behavior. You can complete this final step with a smaller team using your existing website data, or if you have results from recent marketing efforts where you have a specific audience defined, that can also help. To define those audience segments, you're going to first want to decide who are the most important audiences for each of your website goals. And I know that this is really tricky in higher ed. It could be prospective students, it could be parents of prospects or peer institutions or faculty, even the community where your school is. So the most important thing to do is to really align the 1, maybe 2 audiences that are most important for each of your goals. And those could be different audiences depending on what that goal is. Then think about what common characteristics make up your audience. So is there a certain page or section on your website that they would likely visit? That's one way to identify them and segment them. Or maybe they would reside in a certain geographical area, or maybe even be on a specific network like your campus network. So there are a lot of different ways to segment audiences based on their Google Analytics on-site behavior or even those user characteristics. So we're going to look at the College of Engineering, that final measurement plan for them. So for their first 2 goals, it's really about communicating the brand and increasing awareness. So that's going to primarily be looking at external audiences. So you would want to exclude in-network traffic to determine how outside of network audiences are interacting with that research content and viewing those research projects. However, for that 3rd goal, we're looking at both internal and external users. So we might be looking at a specific marketing research campaign to identify those users, or on-site behavior such as views of corporate partnership page, or specific geographic parameters. So there's a few different ways to grab both of those audiences. For Blackhawk, there's just one audience. They're looking at prospective students because this goal really is about prospective students. So to identify them, we'd filter out the campus IP network, and we'd also filter out our current students based on some of their on-site activities. So for example, if they logged into the student portal, we'd filter them out of that prospect audience. So that's what a completed 4-step measurement plan looks like for 2 very different organizational goals. However, in reality, yours is probably going to look a lot more like this because you'll have many organizational and website goals. So we've simplified it down to 1 organizational goal and several website goals, but you're going to have a little bit more complicated time. So just to recap on how to build a measurement plan, this 4-step framework, you'll start with those organizational goals. So those are those objectives that are most important to your school. Then you'll translate those objectives into website goals by determining how your website helps you meet those larger goals. Then you'll identify those key performance indicators, all those places on the site where you can measure how close you are coming to reaching those goals. So all those metrics, that's where you actually dive into the data at that layer. And lastly, your audience segments to make sure those intended audiences are taking the actions you really want them to take on the site. So now we have a measurement plan. What's next? Measurement plan is the foundation for making sure you get the most out of your website data, but there's still some work to do. Obviously, we have a few more webinars. As you've been listening, some of you might have realized that there's some things you can't measure today on your current site. That's because Google Analytics doesn't actually measure everything by default. Without setting up goals and events, you're missing out on some of your site's most valuable data. Our next webinar in this series is going to focus on actually bringing this measurement plan to life within Google Analytics using goals and events. So before we sign off for questions, I'm just going to run through a couple things for our next chat to kind of bridge the gap. Events and goals allow us to provide another layer of data beyond the basics of what we're tracking with Google, like page views and time on page. So those are basic Google Analytics metrics, and goals and events give us one more layer of data on top of that. Goals are going to represent your larger objectives or macro conversions. So in our Blackhawk example, an apply button click would be one of their Google Analytics goals. There's a direct translation there. Events can be used to measure on-site actions that Google doesn't track by default. So that would be clicks on buttons and links, video plays, scrolling, a lot of that content engagement that we talked about, that can be tracked through events. Events can be macro or micro conversions. So for our College of Engineering example, one event that we would set up would be tracking clicks on that share button to share a research story. Both events and goals lead you to quicker insights by providing you with that extra layer of data. It's really valuable. So that's just a brief overview of what you can do with goals and events. Next month, as Tim mentioned, we're going to cover the strategy for setting up goals and events and how to get those set up without help from a developer using Tag Manager. If you haven't already signed up, please consider joining us on December 12th to learn more about bringing your measurement plan to life. All right, we have about 14 minutes. Let's open it up for questions.
Okay, we have one here, says, how often should I be checking on my Google Analytics? Claire, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so how often you check on your Google Analytics really depends on your daily traffic and how many things you're changing and what you're checking for. So for sites with a lot of activities that you can be tracking, or if you're, let's say you're running A/B tests and you're looking for some data that you can make decisions off of, making big changes to your marketing, running an ad campaign, you could check in daily and see some changes and some valuable data. Most of the time though, we recommend kind of a weekly spot check to just make sure everything is running as it should be. And typically on a week-to-week basis, you shouldn't see any major changes. Monthly, you can do a more in-depth review against your insights and your goals and things like that. And then we typically recommend a quarterly report too, to just review larger trends, check on things year over year, and kind of take a step back from those micro moments and just look at organizationally how are we doing as a whole.
Yeah, and I think that last point is really important, that you're trying to spot trends over time, and with recognition that in higher ed specifically, you've got a distinctive seasonality across your year, your fiscal year, and calendar year. Yeah. Coming up on application deadlines, obviously you're looking for different trends in your analytics. So, okay, second question here. One of my major conversions actually takes place on a different website. How could I track that as part of the plan? Allison?
Yeah, that is a really good question. That's actually something we see all the time with higher ed organizations. A lot of the time, perhaps your course enrollment system will be on a different website, or your application form will be hosted by a third party. So that's definitely something that we come across quite a bit. And there's essentially two different ways that you can go about that. So the first way is if you have access to that third party, you can set up cross-domain tracking. So what cross-domain tracking allows you to do is to follow a user from one site to another all the way through the point of conversion. So that's obviously the ideal scenario, but a lot of times you won't actually have access to that other site. So if you're using, say third-party software, you might know ultimately how many folks to enroll or fill out the application form, but you won't be able to connect that back to your website data. So in that case, we recommend when you're actually setting up your events, you still want to track when somebody clicks the application button on your site. And then you want to compare that number of application button clicks to actual submitted applications on that second site. So that way you know about what your funnel is in terms of drop off between the application button on your site and how many people ultimately apply. That then will allow you to set an appropriate value for that action on your site. So if you say, okay, a degree program is worth $40,000, but we know that only half of the people who click on the apply button on our site actually end up applying in terms of just sheer numbers, then your application button click value is 20,000. So still a great value, just not your ultimate conversion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great way to track it if you don't have access to that third-party site.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. You know what? Something you said, I thought sparked an idea for worth mentioning, how important it is for higher ed organizations to connect Google Search Console into their analytics, and if they can, Google Ads.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of really good data you can get from those two, and specifically. You want to tack anything on about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The more sources that you can add to Google, the better. So Google does not give you as many keywords as it used to. There was an update, I believe in 2011, where they started obscuring more of those keywords. So if you connect Google Search Console, you'll be able to get additional data, not just on those users who clicked through to your website, but also about users who actually saw you in search results. So your impressions and then didn't click through. So that can give you a lot of great intelligence about how your users are searching for you. Additionally, with Google Ads, you can set up all sorts of different integrations. So you can integrate a paid search campaign, but even if you're not running paid advertising, you can also set up audiences and share them across the different Google platforms. And that's really great for those segments that I was talking about in step 4. You can set up those audiences, and then when it comes time to market to them, see their data in analytics and in Google Ads.
Yeah, and if you're sick of seeing that not set as the keyword result, integrating Google Search Console is the way to get past that data.
Yeah, it still won't show you everything, but it gives you quite a bit more data.
All right, thank you. I got a couple minutes left here. Next question. How many KPIs should I be measuring? I want to get good data, but don't want to make my reports too overwhelming. Very good question there. Claire, you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, so how many KPIs you're going to be measuring and reporting on? I would answer this in a couple different ways. First of all, it depends on who your audience is. So if it is an internal group and they're super familiar with what the website's doing and what it's set to do, you can handle a few more of those KPIs. Or if you're looking at kind of a bigger stakeholder group, you might want to still be gathering those KPIs, but only reporting on a few of the highest level ones. But as a broader response to the question, a good place to start would be just a few macro conversions, so like 2 to 4 that really have an impact on ROI for your organization. So the big things that contribute to your revenue. So you can really keep track of those and see big trends over time if you're keeping it, in that 2 to 4-ish range. And then around, maybe 5 or so micro conversions per macro conversion would be about the limit that I would recommend. So something like, the 5 key things that that you would hope lead up to an application click would be all those micro conversions. Any more than that, if you're just starting out with this, it is going to be a lot of events and a lot of goals in your analytics reporting. So you really want to make sure that what you're doing is something that you can effectively look at and manage. So yeah, I would say that that's a good way to look at it without making it too complicated.
Yep, good points, all. Okay. It's 12:55. I think we're gonna end it there. If you have any other specific questions, I put my contact information up on the last slide. Feel free to email me Also, just as another logistical note for the next 2 webinars, if for some reason you can't make them, we can definitely still send you the materials that we cover in these. So definitely email me if you want to get this, no matter if you can attend or not. Continue the conversation. Also, if you think a colleague of yours or somebody else you know of that might find this helpful, definitely forward our invitations over to them, and they can click through and register and join us next time. So 12:55, I've given you 5 minutes left for you to get some coffee before your next meeting. Hope you guys all enjoyed the conversation and the topics we covered today. Thanks for your time. We greatly appreciate it. And from Madison, Wisconsin, we say, have an awesome day. Thank you.
Thank you.